Hey, we have another prompt submission to start this episode off before we get going. This one comes from just a few episodes back, which is, kind of the way it always has to be, what with the delay of making these in advance. But a couple episodes ago, I asked you for a god using the prompts of hardship and language. Hungry Badger is back with another submission. They say, I think a god of the changing of seasons would be cool. Whenever a season would get too tough for its worshippers, the god would use the language of rapidly changing the season to try to alleviate their struggle. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% certain I understand, exactly what you're trying to put down there. I've got a rough idea. This may not be what you mean, but when you say it, it makes me think by describing reality differently, instead, as a really, really rudimentary example, instead of saying cold, you start saying warmer, or instead of calling it gusts of wind, you call them just breezes. You start kind of changing the seasons just by the way we describe them, like a very authorial kind of god. I'm not sure that that's entirely what you meant, but it's certainly conjuring that sort of idea in my head, and I think that's a really cool, different way to imagine the way a god exercises their powers. And then that just raises its own questions in my mind about, how would worshippers of a god like that commemorate and celebrate that that's the way the god works? Are these dictionary makers? Is it very important to them the way that words have been crafted over time to trace etymologies, because to them the etymology goes all the way back to the original divine source? My mind is just spinning with ideas based on what you said. Thank you for your submission and for sparking my own imagination, but it's this kind of interesting rolling snowball effect that happens when we pass these back and forth. So I really appreciate you doing your part, and of course, as always, there will be more prompts at the end of this episode for anyone who wants to give their own creativity a whirl and send it back my way. We'll see what we can come up with together. But for now, here's the intro. Yo, put it down now.
Stranded in space on a ship crashing into the atmosphere of an unknown planet, Emile Spencer knew that the only way to survive would be by his own wits and guile. He vowed that somehow he would find and slay the titanic cosmic beast that put him in this predicament, VY572. With every installment, we follow Emile's explorations and discoveries on this journey of revenge against all odds. I'm Midnight Jester, and this is the Left Behind Starforge series.
Last time was something of a travel episode, really. It began with us finding out that we actually did not completely get away from the blockade. On our attempt to make it through out into the Outlands, once again, we had an Imperium blockade that was in the way. We had a whole episode before that about this big blockade run. We started off last time finding out it was not successful, so there was a little bit of a part 2 to that, where it was just us and the blinded mothership, and a little bit more of an attempt to throw it off far away from the initial blockade, just over by the sun. It was eventually successful. We got out into the Outlands. Or so we thought. Because while a lot of the rest of the episode was just kind of traveling from place to place and a little bit of just kind of going through the mechanics of getting there, making the rolls, and attempting to have some sojourn time, we found out late in the episode that we'd actually been followed. There was a stealth ship, an Imperium stealth ship that had been following us. Maybe not immediately, we don't know when they caught up, but as the Beowulf was making its way, beginning its deorbiting process into Cinder, they noticed this stealth ship it stood out against the embers of the planet. We had a last-ditch effort to stop it from getting away with the information about which planet was the one that would be housing the secret base. We figured that the Imperium had figured out enough to determine, that's where we're headed. We're going to this secret base. We didn't want to give up Concord that way. So there was a last attempt to just utterly blow it out of the sky, which through some heavy momentum canceling, if I remember correctly, meant that, yes, we were able to just blast them before they could really do much of anything. And then we left off with hanging over Emile's head this question of how would he be received when we got back to Cinder? We're going into this, just as kind of like a mechanics reminder, our momentum is, well, it's basically where you would ordinarily start. In fact, it's exactly where you would ordinarily start. We're just at a +2 momentum. Last time we were able to get rid of the fact that Emile's been wounded for many sessions now. Finally got treated for that during the sojourn, so we no longer have any misfortunes. We're not wounded anymore. The ship never got battered. It was a close call a few times, but nothing like that. Health, we're at a 2. Spirit, we're at a 1. Supply, we're also at a 1. The Beowulf had to really go through a lot of their supply, and like there'd been a fuel shortage due to the blockade run. Really ran through everything to get here, and did not spend a lot of time at Hyperion Station to resupply. The figuring by Tycoon was that we can't delay this any longer. Get Emile down to Cinder. We need to take care of this. We can restock on Cinder. Like, Cinder will have some supplies. We need to get down there. And so before we officially get started with the session, why don't we have our... Well, I have a little bit of a vignette in mind that I'd like to do. And as usual, it's partly because I think it would be something fun to explore, and partly because, hey, our momentum's only 2, and this is pretty important for Emile. Before we actually go down to the planet, I want to check in with Fern. I want to have a little bit of a vignette where we check in with Fern, because we've not really seen Fern at all since we became members of the, well, unofficial members. I guess we're more the prisoner of the Beowulf than anything else, but we're often treated like a fellow member. Oh, that actually reminds me. One important thing that happened last time that I should cover in the recap. Emile talked to Cypher, the XO of the Beowulf, and kind of took her aside and convinced her to have his back. Like, if this goes wrong on when they get down to Concord, she has promised him that she will get him to safety. She will not go as far as to hijack this ship. She's not going to take it from Tycoon, but she has promised that she'll have his back enough to get him to safety, and that officially made her one of our new connections. Forgot to mention that part. That was a big deal. But again, we've not really checked in with Fern since we got onto this ship, and I think it's not just that we haven't highlighted it in the narrative. Like, it's literally not been happening. Emile's been busy trying to, like, kind of watch out for himself and simultaneously trying to win over members of the crew. Fern has not been really accepted very well. Like, it's not like the crew loved Emile, but he's at least human. And they've not been nearly as accepting of Fern as, like, a sentient being. And so we briefly talked about in the past that Fern was probably, like, hanging back in just, like, industrial areas of the ship. Areas that are just really out of the way. People don't go to them unless they're being just mechanically serviced. It's almost like Fern has been going feral again. Not fully. Still as intelligent as before. Or actually, maybe we should make that part of her role. Like, yeah, maybe I should leave that to chance. I don't know what's been happening to Fern. Like, maybe... Like, we know that Fern got a lot of intelligence based on absorbing Emile, but does that last forever? Does it wear off over time? Is it the type of thing that if you've not been keeping socialized that starts to go away? Yeah, let's ask the Oracle about this, because I think it could be very telling. Like, because the scene is... Emile has gotten that sense that Fern can't be found anywhere, has to look around, is kind of exploring all over the ship, and wants to check in and have a chat with Fern before they actually reach Concord. I think they're currently deorbiting, they're working their way down. The people in charge are sending the right kind of coded messages to the people of Cinder to make it clear that they're Vault Hunters, but in a very clandestine way, like tight beam messages that aren't going to just be picked up by just anybody. They're very, like, watching out for any more stealth fighters or things like that. They're being very careful, so it's a slow process. As that's going on, Emile has been looking around for Fern. And we're finally going to see Fern in Indeed. One of these, it's like a really cramped area. I envision Emile almost like having to duck down a little bit because it's like tucked in there back behind like a lot of machinery and stuff. And like, it's the type of environment where you gotta kind of like step over certain pipes and stuff. The way I'm kind of envisioning this is, so the attic in my house, the ventilation in there takes up way too much of the space. There's just no way to navigate it all. So much of it is cramped and blocked off. It's not as bad as that, but it's definitely like, it's a squeezing process, and like, you're doing a lot of stepping over large pipes and cords and ducking under things. There's just no way to get around nicely. You definitely don't just walk upright. And so we see Emile going into this sort of area that would much more comfortably fit an amorphous being like Fern. And maybe it's like especially warm here. Fern is taken to it almost like a cat finding the warm spot. Because, it's industrial. There's a lot of radiant heat coming out of here. And so probably less comfortable for Emile, who's visibly sweating throughout all of this, but it's important to find Fern. And when we spot them, let's do this roll of the dice to find out, like, how close is Fern to the Fern that we remember? And I want to think about how I'm going to phrase this specifically and like what sort of levels I'm interested in. Like, right now I'm just starting at a 50-50 as far as like, is this good, is this bad? But I want to set the like bounds of this in advance. Like, what am I interested in? Am I interested in the possibility of Fern being like fully just feral and like back the way that Fern was before? Like before we were ever absorbed? Am I okay with the idea of Fern being that far gone in this moment? And I think I am. I don't want that to be especially likely, though, but I'm okay with that being possible. So maybe I'll do this kind of classic style where it, like, starts off with, like, is Fern at least this far gone, and, like, gets less and less likely. Though I don't have that many steps I could really ask, I don't think. Why don't we start with unlikely, asking if Fern is just full-on feral? Is Fern fully back to just the feral form of before with unlikely, and we get no. So they're at least not that far gone. Upgrading this to 50-50, has Fern lost some amount of that sociability? Yes. Oh, and that roll, had I had that, it was a 14, so that would have been a yes on the unlikely. Like, had that been the roll the first time, Fern would have been full on feral. So we'll stop there. So Fern lost a little bit. Perhaps the way that manifests is Fern has lost a lot of that. Like, we know that Emile and Fern had kind of developed a sort of Han Solo and Chewbacca-like ability to just understand each other, where Emile knew what Fern was trying to communicate, but perhaps maybe it's on both ends like that. Like, that's just kind of gotten rusty between the two of them because they haven't been keeping it up. It's like any language where if you stop practicing it, it goes away. But I don't want it to just be the language, given that this was about, like, Fern specifically having lost some of that. Like, what would be an example of something that Fern struggles with now? And I'm going to try and inspire this with an action and theme oracle. So I feel like I haven't done just, like, oracle rolling through the game as often lately. So I rolled aid and health. Oh, interesting. That's interesting. I don't especially think of Fern as being, like, medical, which is, like, the immediate literal interpretation of that. Aid and health. I mean, the other way that I interpret that, which kind of makes some sense, like, Fern, we've never really explored specifically what Fern eats, but I can't imagine Fern hasn't really been tended to much. And one imagines that when feral, the whole idea is that these feroids would absorb somebody into their body and, like, digest them. That seemed to be what was going on when Emile first got sucked in. We've not witnessed Fern having any opportunity to do that, and while we've never explored, like, what does Fern eat instead, it could be the type of thing that, like, when you digest a big being like that, you're set for a while. And so it might just be that Fern hasn't had to eat in a while, but now maybe Fern's health isn't doing so well. Fern's health needs to be aided because they're basically starving out of just trying to, like, stay out of the way. Or maybe feroids can enter a little bit more of a, like, hibernation state when they're not in an area where there's a lot of food. So maybe it's that sort of thing where Fern has to be woken back up out of this state. They're more groggy as a result and definitely in need of food. Because usually you do this right after a big meal, which Fern hasn't had in a while. So instead of hibernating like a bear, it's more hibernating out of your battery is about to run out kind of thing. And so it's a little bit more of an emergency state. And there's maybe just like a low level of awareness. Oh, yeah, okay, I like this. There's like a minimum level of awareness that's maintained of the environment to know when is there a creature that you could potentially digest in order to refuel yourself. So it's like a low power mode to recognize there's something I could eat. And Fern notices when Emile comes up and gets that message, doesn't immediately know that it's Emile. Now, Fern's not going to attack Emile or anything. I think it'll become clear quickly enough, but comes back into being in full, like more full awareness, notices that it's Emile, and communicates sort of slowly, a little bit a little bit off, but communicates a vague greeting. Perhaps the colors aren't nearly as bright. Maybe that could be what's making it harder to communicate right now. Fern mostly just kind of looks more desaturated and just kind of like a grayish black blob. A lot of that hypnotic, like vibrant color to the goo is just not really there. It's much more muted, and so it's harder to interpret with the same sort of specificity that they had before. But Emile gets the idea that it's a greeting and says to Fern, "I can't tell you how nice it is to see you. Yeah, I know it's been a little while," and I think he like starts noticing that Fern is like, the lighting isn't great in here, but recognizes like Fern isn't looking so good, and says, "Oh my God, are you okay? What's happening?" And Fern like tries to communicate something, and I don't think that Emile is able to fully get. Like, Emile gets the sense that like, indeed, Fern's not feeling great, like is unhealthy. This is some kind of an illness, but definitely can't understand specifically that this is like a hunger sort of thing. Fern's trying to communicate it, but Emile's just not getting it. I'm really sorry to hear that you're feeling under the weather. I think, is that what you're trying to say? I came here because I wanted to say that I haven't seen you around in a while. I don't know if you're aware, but we're about to get down to the surface of Cinder. About to be seeing Concord. I don't know how much you remember of it." And Fern is just like low enough energy. We're not really getting any kind of response on whether or not, or if it's there, it's so subtle Emile doesn't even pick up on it. "When I was last there were all the Vault Hunters, and I'm here to make my apology. And I don't know how this is going to go. And I know people here haven't exactly been the nicest to you this whole time. I feel bad about having invited you along to have a new home, and this really hasn't been much of your home. And, well, for a few reasons, I wanted to ask if you would be willing to come along with me while I face what's coming. And moreover than that, back in the beginning, the last time we were on this planet, you traveled inside my body, able to, well, kind of scarily take over when you so chose. Given how the Vault Hunters have been treating you, and given that I could really use to have an extra ace up my sleeve if things go poorly, I was wondering if you'd be willing to do it now." And I think for more reasons than Emile understands, this is a great deal for Fern. Like, I'm not going to make this a roll, because I think Fern understands that in this form, Fern is a little bit like, when Fern gets inside of Emile, that's kind of like being a parasite. And so, starving as Fern is, Fern would be able to just like lap up the nutrients that Emile's body is taking. In their starvation and like slightly diminished social skills and everything, I think Fern like doesn't even respond, but almost kind of like starts enveloping and like wrapping up Emile before even giving a response. And he's like thrown off a little bit, like, "Oh, wow, I already," and like it's kind of uncomfortable even, because again, it's with the like freneticism of it's like a drowning person like desperately latching onto you. And so it's more forceful than he was expecting, but they start just kind of like shooting up his nose and into his mouth. He's like coughing and turning his head, and just because he, again, and to use water as the metaphor again, he didn't get that good breath or like blow out first. So like he's not ready for it. It just feels awkward, and like Fern just gets inside of Emile, and he's doubled over and just like coughing unexpectedly. It takes that moment to recover and just goes, "I guess that's a yes." And we'll just call it there. I mean, it's just supposed to be a simple vignette. I'm going to give myself the +1 momentum, and we're going to flash forward a little bit to more of where we're picking up in this actual narrative. I don't think anybody knows that Emile has Fern traveling around on the inside. Just kind of a quick little backup plan. When we come in, at this point, all of the negotiations, all the communications to have Beowulf be received by the rest of the Vault Hunters of Concord, that's all happened. The big-ass doors at the front have opened. Beowulf is inside. They've already shut behind. Like, when we come in, Emile is locked into this place. He's being escorted down towards the front of the ship where I think he's being flanked by, like, Tycoon is on one side of him, Cypher is on the other. We'll say that Dash and Vert, all the named characters basically, Dash and Vert are there behind a number of other Volta. I mean, really everybody on the crew is getting off. Maybe there's like a scant reserve crew that's left behind. Just, again, it's the sort of thing, like, in case anything goes poorly, they're ready to get this thing running quicker. Like, there's just kind of the B team is left behind, but a lot of the characters we've come to know are there. You know, Splinter and... what was it? Shutdown, I think was his name. We had that, who's that other one? Let me check that out. Yeah, Shutdown. Shutdown and Splinter are there. All of these crew members are just kind of walking in behind Emile, basically making sure that at no moment does he feel like he's got an upper hand here or he can do anything untoward. Like, they're all watching him, but also it's not completely just a keep track of Emile sort of thing. It is also just a, like, hey, we're in the secret base. We've heard about this all the time. Like, a lot of people want to see this, and it's a little bit of their shore leave. They didn't get a lot of time on Hyperion, barely any. And so there's a lot of people that are getting ready to just kind of check in with other Vault Hunters they maybe haven't talked to in a while and get the read on the situation, see what they can do. It's a complicated situation. There's a lot going on, basically. But Emile is highly, highly outnumbered, and they're walking towards, of course, a big group of the people on Concord. And chiefly among them is, of course, Valkyrie, who is right there at the top. Arms crossed, scowl on her face, like just staring utter death into Emile. Because I don't think anything has actually been communicated to her about the intention of this yet. As far as she knows, she basically put a hit out on Emile, and Tycoon is about to turn him over. And to be fair, Emile doesn't officially know that's not what's happening. Like, this could have been a ploy all along, where Tycoon, in his wisdom, gets kind of everything. Like, gets the bounty on Emile, to the degree there is one. I mean, it was more a this is our responsibility than a bounty. But I think, if I remember all the way back to when I had initially talked about it, there may have been some kind of a bounty. I don't recall. Let's just say, yeah, there's a token amount, but it was mostly a we do this because it's the right thing. And you'd get a lot of, like, clout in the group and all that. Not that Tycoon needs it. But it could be a thing where Tycoon gets that, and has this power core to do with as he pleases. He could maybe donate it or not. This could all be a big betrayal. I think Emile in this moment knows better than to be the first one to talk. And he's glad for that instinct when he sees that Valkyrie begins by making some signs to Tycoon in the old sign language that we haven't seen since many, many, many episodes ago. As you may recall, this whole base used to be just utterly silent as a means to avoid possible detection through subdermal microphones that were implanted in them when they were prisoners. Sage was always worried about that, and it seems that for whatever reason they are back to that habit. And I think it's clear that Tycoon, like, understands this language. I think you can tell just by looking at his hands that, like, his signing is more rudimentary and uncertain. He can communicate, but not well. It's the type of thing where he can understand more than he can comfortably say. So we see a lot more hesitation in his movements, that sort of stuff. I would like to start this off, actually, because we had this communication back and forth, and we're, of course, seeing through the perspective of Emile. I think it could be a cool secure an advantage with wits to see, can Emile kind of pick up the gist of it? He spent a little time here as a prisoner. He got a little bit of context of certain types of motions before. He knows what sorts of things they would be talking about now and is watching these, and it helps that Tycoon is a little bit more slow with it, so it's easier to keep track of. Can Emile start getting at least the gist of this language? I think it could be a cool thing. He's not going to pick up a language immediately and know how to speak it, or not speak it, but communicate it and all that. But let's see. So this is definitely going to be a wits move. I can't imagine that any part of any of his assets would be helping him with this. So let's just do a straight wits move and see what happens. All right, we start off with a strong hit with a match, a double 5 match at that. That was pretty good. So you succeed, take +2 momentum, add +1 on your next move, and we also need to represent the match. It being a double 5 match, like, my first instinct on that is like, yeah, maybe Emile's already picked up an ability to communicate with Fern pretty well. He's a really sharp mind. Like, maybe that is good enough to say that, like, he is such a fast study, and maybe it's a little bit with the help of his AI that's helping analyze movements and making a little bit of a dictionary on his behalf. Yeah, let's full on say, like, he knows enough to communicate at about the level of, like, Tycoon, where it's sloppy. It would be like talking with a very heavy accent if this were speech. It's not the best, but he could get a point across. And certainly, because of the strong hit of it and succeeding, he does understand what they're saying. At least roughly. Again, he's not a fluent communicator, but he now knows enough to get around with the help of his computer anyway. I think if for some reason his computer system is taken away, he'll have a lot more of a struggle at doing that. I think he really does need the help, and otherwise it stretches credibility a little bit too much for me. Okay, so what have they been saying? Has Tycoon... I actually kind of want to leave this up to fate, because I, as a player, like, I've not really decided, like, is Tycoon just pulling one over Emile or not? I like the danger of not knowing, like, he very well could be. Part of the reason I'm doing this is because we're going into this with already 8 out of 10 progress on I will make amends to the people of Concord with the gift of a power core. So we already know the math is on our side to get a pretty good result if I were to end this vow, and I don't want it to be just that simple. You know, like, I want a little bit more danger / like not being as certain about what's going to happen. Like, don't get me wrong, the dice could screw me over at any moment, but I want the ability to, at least the chance of more wrinkles to happen. So I'm just going to ask the Oracle, when Emile understands what Tycoon is saying, is the gist of it that Emile is being given over, like, is he speaking on Emile's behalf, like, hey, he's here to make an apology and make things right? Is he talking about the power core giving over? Or is he just on, like, hey, I'm here to give over our enemy? Because I feel like even if you only understand the basics, like, you could definitely get that level. And I am just going to leave this at an utter 50-50. You know, Tycoon is a little bit worried about how much Cypher is into Emile. It could justify him being, like, a threat and wanting to just hand him over and, like, not have that be a problem anymore. And I think that is actually what's upgrading this from unlikely to 50-50. Rather than say that being a reason to make this a likely thing that it's a betrayal. I don't think he's naturally disposed towards betrayal, but whereas it might have initially started as like, yeah, I'm going to make good on our deal, a wariness of Emile and his closeness with Cypher has bumped this up to 50-50. So, is Tycoon going to make good... I guess it doesn't matter which direction I do it since it's 50-50, but is Cypher trying to betray Emile here? I'll just put it like that. 50-50. No. I rolled a 78 on that, which means that even on likely, that actually would have still been a no. So okay, he's sticking by his word. Emile gets that sense that, like, I think what Emile determines is that he's being presented very neutrally, which kind of goes in line with what we know about what Tycoon has said previously. Like, as far as Tycoon has ever said, this is Emile's deal. He's not really going to help him. He's just going to give him the opportunity. And that's a lot of what Emile is picking up right now. That, like, Tycoon, I can go as far as to say that, like, he is trying very hard to not predispose Valkyrie one way or the other. And Emile gets that sense. Like, there's kind of, some of the hesitations are just an unfamiliarity with the language, and some of it is he'll, like, start to communicate one concept, but then pull it back a little bit to make it a little bit less, like, biasing, and just a little bit more towards, like, here's just the facts. And so what he communicates is that he encountered Emile when they were out and about around, was that around Anubis where they encountered each other? Yeah, it must have been. He encountered Emile around Anubis. They spoke. They came to an agreement that Emile wishes to speak to his actions from the last time he was here. And, like, there's probably a little bit more in the way of details than that, but, like, it's largely bare bones like that. And Emile notices that, like, while he is not being presented as a specific prisoner or being handed over as bounty, Tycoon has also not said anything about Emile specifically being apologetic, and certainly says nothing about the power core. He's kind of leaving a wide area for Emile to fill in the gaps and speak for his own speak for himself. Like, Tycoon is not going to advocate for Emile's intentions. He's just very careful with his language. Let's see. So everybody has been silent so far. I don't think Emile wants to betray his advantage that he can understand the sign language. But like everybody kind of looks to him once Tycoon has finished this kind of like, this is the intention. And we see Valkyrie's expression is not especially changed. She is still staring death into Emile. And we can tell that at this vantage point, like, sure, she'll hear Emile out as like a courtesy, but as soon as that's done, like, we're getting ready to give the signal and just kill him. Like, this has been a long time coming. The moment is now. We're going to make a big public display of it. But sure, as a courtesy to... It's kind of like, it's deference to Tycoon that she is willing to entertain, like, fine, let him speak. So everybody turns to Emile. And Emile doesn't want to give up that he knows how to speak sign language, but he also doesn't want to be rude and speak out loud, because he knows at least last time that was a big deal. I was going to say, like, maybe he can try and find a way to communicate via screen like before, but I think he has second thoughts about that, because he's like, well, maybe if I start asking for a screen, like, get on their network and communicate textually, maybe that'll come off like I'm trying to get into their network. So maybe... why don't we just have him set up his own little, like, we know that his AR can make kind of holographic displays that usually only he can read especially well because they're focused for his eyes. But maybe he can set it up so it's a little bit more focused for everybody else in the room to be able to just read as he puts up his own silent text to be able to communicate that way. I don't think there's a role for it. That sounds relatively simple in his operations. What I'm going to say is going to communicate silently. And he says... People of Concord, Valkyrie, I understand why I am coming here as a public enemy. My actions last time that I was here, my hubris, they led to the death of many, as well as jeopardizing the safety of this community from the Imperium. I have done a lot to harm you, and I have come to acknowledge that harm was in my control. I made choices that were risky, out of self-preservation, and you paid the price. My bomb killed your leader because I was hubristic enough to try and take control of Tetrahedron. I thought that I was good enough to do it, and I was not. When fleeing your justice, I stole the very ship and power core that I was to present to Sage as a token of goodwill. Just because I have reasons for these actions does not make them any less damaging to all of you. However, from the moment that I left this planet, I have been working towards trying my best to somehow make this right. I understand if you personally can never forgive me in your hearts. But I cannot continue living knowing that due to my actions, you are this vulnerable to the Imperium. And, moreover, utterly stranded here on an inhospitable planet. I sadly cannot return the ship that I took. I no longer have it. But I can grant you a power core significantly more potent than the one that it held before. On board the Beowulf, I have secured access to a, whatever the serial number is. I forget what it was. I was making up letters and numbers back in the day, but that power core. With its implementation on this station, I have no doubt that you will be able to conceal yourself in the manner that you intended, and beyond that have ample power to spare for any number of other projects. Beyond that, I can lead you to the site where the Reacher, the ship that I was initially on, crashed into this planet. It is sunken down into magma, but I have every belief that your people, with concerted effort, and my help if you would take it, can salvage that ship, dredge it up from beneath the surface, and use it to great effect. It is damaged from a crash, but there is much that can be taken from it. Much that is ready to make this a thriving base. And he, loads up coordinates of, where that ship is. It's on the screen. He, pulls up a little image of the map that shows kind of roughly where it is and all that. And says, I present these things to you regardless of your decision on whether or not I am to be executed. I ask that you revoke my enemy status among the Vault Hunters, but you have these things regardless, because it is what is right. And it's like all of this text has been scrolling past. He tries to do it as eloquently as possible. I think what I have described is the making the progress roll on making the amends. I don't think that this is a, compel move to try and get that one more progress or anything like that. I think we've done what we're going to do. It's 8 progress, and this is the moment where we get to find out, was it enough? So let's see. And it is a strong hit. I rolled a 5 and a 3. Your vow is fulfilled. About goddamn time. Man, somebody go back and let me know, because I'm too lazy to. What session was it that we're in episode 39 now. How many episodes ago was it that I made that vow that has by far been carrying this game? God. But we get this strong hit on this formidable vow. So we're going to get to fill in a full box on our Legacies track for quests. This brings us up to full 6 boxes. We're really making our way along there. Any allies who shared this vow also mark the reward. Anyway, we don't have allies. However, before we move on and describe exactly how this works, I just want to get all the mechanical stuff out of the way, because I think this definitely works for developing my relationship with Cypher, because we have completed a quest to their benefit. Kind of. It's more to my benefit, but she's a Vault Hunter. We have done something that lifts up the Vault. We're setting them up for success. We are giving them something of worth, not directly, but the point is we're doing enough things, at least kind of, that we definitely get to develop that relationship. So we're going to mark progress. She is formidable as well, so we get 1 full box. And let's see if we don't have anybody else here that would qualify, but yes, Cypher sure does. In a way, I could make a really bad argument that Fern has been with me, that I've leveraged Fern's help in desperate circumstances because Fern is on the inside, but it didn't go wrong. So I think it's too weak of an argument. Unless it's about just having done that over the entire course of this process, but I think we've been representing that as it comes, so not going to do that. We're just going to get the 1 box for Cypher. And I think this moment is worthy of zooming out a little bit. So, in broad strokes, Valkyrie, I think her face softens a little bit, and God, if this were a strong hit with a match, that I think I'd full on having her shed a tear or something. But he didn't get that. Valkyrie's face softens a little bit. And I think she looks to Tycoon. Because she wants to get his feeling on you've spent time with him. She looks to him for putting the thumb on the scale of is this guy legit? Is he being real? Do you believe him? And I think because of what we've seen before, Tycoon is unwilling to. He's not willing to push this. He firmly believes this is Valkyrie's decision to make. He's a stickler to the rules that they have in that regard. And so I think he communicates that much. She signs to him, and they don't know that Emile can follow this, but she signs to him just 1 word. It's just honest, ? And Tycoon thinks for a moment about what he's willing to say, and all he responds is that the power core is in the Beowulf. But he's very matter of fact like that. Just the power core is in the Beowulf. She waits for him to say more, and he doesn't. And so she looks off to the side a little bit and really ponders. I think maybe even as we broad strokes this, she needs time to think about it. It's not a decision made in that moment. She walks away from the room. And it's just this tense, everybody is waiting. And I think it lasts a long time, at least 10 minutes of just being out of the room, where nobody is communicating anything because everybody has that feeling of this needs to be decided first. All the other Vault Hunters on her side of the room are just they're armed and ready. They're not full on sighted, they don't have Emile in their sights, but they're ready to make it happen and see. I think they've moved enough around the room that Emile is So no, I think they would have stayed where they are. I think it's just this tense kind of standoff, even though like it's not like two sides standing off against each other. They're all on the same side, but they still kind of stay in their separate ranks. And so there's like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes of everybody just doing that, waiting for somebody to break. And then eventually Valkyrie comes back in the room. She walks like straight up to Emile, gets right in his face, sizes him up like one last time, like really looks him in the eye. And Emile tries to just be calm about it and accepting like whatever she says is what it go. Like, I've just be cool is kind of all he's thinking in that moment, knowing that he's got some backup plans just in case. But is looking her back in the eye, trying to not be threatening about it. And I think she decks him, like she punches him right in the face, knocks him down to the floor, and starts walking away. And like everybody starts like raising their guns, and Emile is terrified about what's about to happen as he's like down on the floor. But then he sees that she like holds a hand up and gives the sign of removal, in the sense of like removing his enemy status. She signs that as she's walking away without another word to him, and then all the guns lower. And I think Emile, like his understanding of the sign language isn't enough to know when she signs removal. He doesn't have the full context to know whether that's like remove him or remove, like he doesn't know what to make of it. But then all the guns lower and he understands, and like there's a big exhalation of relief. And then things kind of get back to normal around here. People go back to their regular duties. You know, the other Vault Hunters from the Beowulf start mingling in, doing all the stuff I was talking about, like getting to know friends they haven't seen in a little while, getting set up. And so we're gonna zoom out at this point to, I think we're going to spend enough time here that it's worthy of another Sojourn move. Because, yeah, in this moment, not a lot of words are exchanged, but eventually they kind of reach into a rhythm, and it becomes clear that, yeah, the community, they want Emile's help in working on getting this ship salvaged, certainly in installing the power core in such a way to get that blocking, like, it's not like a stealth shield exactly. This isn't an energy dome that is going like, this isn't an energy dome like we had on the other planet. It's more just, it's an interference sort of thing that blocks signals like from escaping. Like they're just trying to make sure that they don't need to be silent anymore. And they don't have to worry as much about being surveilled. They know that visually they're not that visible from the surface. They're just trying to block out like readings from being able to be determined from orbit. Somebody down on the planet could definitely find out about this base. But from orbit, the whole point of this is to kind of obscure that. But not like, it's not like stealth or cloaking technology or anything like that. It's not a literal physical barrier that you couldn't get through. It's just sort of a kind of interference thing that garbles enough going in and out that it makes it kind of look like just the effect of the heat haze and everything. Like it's just impossible to read from the background noise of everything else you'd be reading in the planet. And so it just blends in. That's what they're trying to set up. And so Emil's going to spend some time here for a number of reasons. Chief among them being like, the Beowulf is spending some time here. Tycoon's not going anywhere, and Emile has no ship of his own right now. So, like it or not, he's sojourning. And so we're going to kind of highlight certain moments that happen as a result of this sojourn move. When this happens, like when we spend enough time doing this, I'm definitely going to be finding out if we advance the clock on the wooden heart situation. We'll do that because he's spending enough time that it's relevant. But let's do that last. So let's make this sojourn move. So when you spend time recovering within a community, roll plus heart. It'd be nice if I had built up a little bit more momentum first, but whatever. Let's see what happens. I really hope this isn't a miss. It'd be nice to actually get some good recovery here. Like, I'd really, really love a strong hit. Oh, man. Can I justify any reason to build up a little bit more momentum first? I guess what would what would Emile do that secures an advantage? Okay. I'm going to be nice to myself on that. I have a reason. I think Emile can give up the leverage that he understands their language. You know, relatively early on, he communicates to them, like once it's decided he's not going to be, there's no like death sentence over him anymore. He signs back to everybody that, like he signs to relevant people here his thanks for their understanding, and that he hopes that he is sincere in his want to continue making this community better, to help hide them and to help them dredge the ship up. And he like communicates all this to them as best as he can in their sign language. And I think by showing that he understands and communicating to them on their level and respecting their traditions and all of that, perhaps that can secure him an advantage of just like, it's easier to recover here if people are, if they've got your back, if they're going to see you as a friend rather than, well, we're not going to kill you. And so he's going to vie for that by just trying to get a little close to them and show all those signs of respect. And I'm going to let myself get away with that because it happens before we really sojourn and see if I can eke out a little bit more momentum. This is definitely with heart. This is about sociability by far. So we're going to make that heart roll, and we're going to find out maybe this would have been a strong hit anyway, and I guess it would have been a sojourn had I just said that, but let's see. Nope, okay, this is a weak hit, so I can either take 2 momentum or 1 on my next move. 2 momentum would put me up to a 7, which is starting to get relatively good at canceling out things. Or I could be rolling with a +3 instead of a +2. I think I'm going to take the momentum here. I think that ultimately that would help me out more. So it goes over decently well. You know, it's a start. They respect the effort, but again, his communication is a little sloppy. So it's not like he feels like he's family or something like that. And he's still coming right off of the idea that, like, we all want you to die. So it's a bit of an uphill battle. But it helps, you know? It helps to start off the sort of breaking bread and all of that. Extending a little bit more of an olive branch and not holding that as an ace up his sleeve. And so let's make the actual sojourn move. Hopefully I don't even need to use the momentum, but let's see. It's a weak hit, and sadly, the reason why is because I rolled a 10, so there's nothing I can do with momentum, but hey, whatever. That's what happens. This is a safe refuge, but time is short or resources are strained, which makes sense. I mean, they're not exactly a well-to-do place yet. They're still trying to get set up on their own. So I can make, my allies and I can each make 1 recover move. No more than 3 moves total among the group. And, you know, we assume an automatic strong hit for all of them. So let's see. I think the resources being strained it's a big part of this. There's only so much they can help. I think the Beowulf would definitely be trying to... I think they're not in this to resupply, because they don't want to... There are scant resources to go around. However, the Beowulf itself is looking shitty right now. Its integrity is all the way at 0. I think their move would be to repair. So we assume an automatic strong hit on this, and we are functionally at a facility. We're certainly not in the field or under fire, so that gives us 5 repair points. And my workshop module only helps if I'm repairing in the field, which we're not. So it's just going to be those 5 points. Plus, this is not something Emile is directly doing, so it kind of wouldn't make sense to make use of his workshop anyway. So each point can get us an integrity back. They could easily just turn all 5 into just getting their ship in, well, ship shape. We could certainly do that. The only other thing, like, they could repair other devices and stuff. I don't feel like that would be... Like, the only thing that comes to mind is, like, maybe they could be repairing Ironside or something, but I don't think that's a big priority to most of the Beowulf. That's just a personal priority for Dash. So yeah, I think they would just be focusing on, like, get this ship back up to full 5 integrity. So they do that. Emile needs to bring his spirit up. It's been lingering at a 1, and I think it makes a lot of sense that when there's no longer a death sentence over your head, it's a bit of a relief. And so I think that we definitely are finding a moment of peace with a little bit of socialization and sharing intimacy, like getting to know more of the Vault Hunters more. Again, we're in like montage mode. This is happening over the course of days, weeks. It's a little while down here. He gets to know them a little bit better, has a little bit more of a fresh start. I think the installation of the power core is something that's just going to happen over the course of this sojourn. They get that. That's just going to happen without needing to roll. There are enough help at that, and that's an easy enough thing that I think that's just going to happen. So over these weeks, he's kind of vaguely helping out, being useful, helping them get this system set up they get the interference going. Everybody's able to talk freely again once it happens. So like there's no longer a need for sign language. It's a little bit weird at first. These are a lot of people that have not done a lot of speaking in a while. And it's like their throats are just like, they're like all dry from that. But they start getting to know each other a little bit more and working together on a communal project. And knowing that he can do that with it not being everybody trying to kill him this time gives him a lot of peace. And so we get a strong hit on this Hearten. And as a result of that, you find companionship or comfort, and your spirit is strengthened. We're not actually shaken, so we can take 2 spirit, except we made this as a sojourn, so we take 1 more, which brings us all the way up to spirit 4. So it really, really takes a lot of that edge off. Our health still isn't wonderful, it's at 2. And the supply in general isn't great, but that's just indicative of there wasn't a lot to go around here. And I think over the course of this, there's this lingering question about this massive project that would be dredging up the sunken ship from the magma. Like finding a way to do that, or like drain the magma so that they can do it. Like getting a way to actually salvage this ship and what's left of it. That's a huge project. And I'm reminded, of course, that I have the asset from my workshop. When you swear an iron vow to undertake a long-term engineering project, extreme or greater, I can re-roll any dice. When you obtain a crucial part or resource, mark progress on the quest and take +2 momentum. When you devote extended time to the project in your workshop, face danger and add +1 on a hit mark. Probably like, I got a lot of things. This very thing that I got on my workshop module, this ability, is all about taking on huge, long projects. And I think it's time to finally do one of those. Because Emile has promised to everybody here, he is going to help them. Like over these weeks, he is going to help them do this. So I want to set up an extreme vow, because this is a major undertaking. That's a huge ship in the middle of just sunken at the bottom of like just utterly covered in a huge, huge lake of magma. How the hell are they going to do this? But he swears that that it's possible. Like he knows the ship. He knows that it should be able to survive that heat. Like magma's nothing. They've flown that thing so close to a sun and everything. Like the ship will survive. Not everything in it will have, but a lot of the most usable, like the material is all there. It'll be so helpful for their ability to like flesh out this base. He swears by it. And maybe like this even happens over like some drinks and stuff where he's being a little bit more brazen. But he's like slamming his hands down at one point, claiming like, it's possible. And I swear that I will get it done. So let's make a vow here. And this vow is to salvage the Reacher from the magma. This is indeed an extreme vow. Now, we are swearing this. We're going to swear this vow to like everybody in the room, up including Cypher, which I believe helps us out because they're a connection. Yep. It's a heart roll, but we're swearing this vow to a connection, among others. So we add +1. We don't share a bond, though, so we don't get to add +2. And because of our asset, we can re-roll any dice that we want to. So we're well set up to get a strong hit on this. Let's see what happens. So heart with a +1. And indeed, we can re-roll any dice. Oh, but there is no need. That was a natural strong hit. The dice didn't even try to oppose that. It was a 2 and a 4. We got a 9 on that. You are emboldened, and it is clear what you must do next. Take +2 momentum. I will do that. We're at 9 momentum now. As indeed, this happens after a lot of celebration. Like, this is probably the night of celebration after all of the, like, the interference is all set up. Everybody's celebrating a successful project, and that they're able to talk again. They use a lot of their meager supplies to hold this celebration, so it's mostly just, like, really high-proof alcohol. It's, like, it's cheap and artificial stuff. Oh, no. Let's do something cooler. Let's say that Emile, when he was leaving Taiga, there was that special hard liquor that he was supposed to be getting for to bring back up on top of the mountain. But he never wound up having to do that because of everything that went down. But let's say he still wound up getting that alcohol. So Emile breaks it out and shares it with everybody. Yeah, let's go with that. It'll just get the job done. The Beowulf gets from their stores a little bit. Everybody is having this big celebration. It's a celebration in 2 parts because I think the Beowulf has a little bit of a tradition. Because, like, they're getting ready to maybe, like, they might be peacing out for a little bit. This isn't their vow, right? And Emile's made all these bold claims here, like, they might just leave him behind. In fact, we're going to say that's the case. Like, Emile is going to, like, he's putting his money where his mouth is on this. He is going to see this through while the Beowulf, like, leaves. And so they're doing a farewell party. The reason why is they travel out in space all the time, right? Like, they're not beholden to any particular planet for a long period of time. And so it becomes hard to keep track of like how much time has gone by? Like how many years has it been? Just doesn't have the same sort of relevance when you're not bound to any particular orbiting body. Sure, they have computers that can measure it in anything, but socially, they have started a tradition where they consider it a new year every time they take off from one of their communities and like go back into space. There's a tradition where like everybody on board has the opportunity to basically re-sign up to be part of the Beowulf or stick around. Like there's no judgment. People go in and out this way. And so they have a big kind of like a New Year's party sort of thing where they celebrate that they're now officially considering this the next year because it's the next tour of duty kind of thing. So it's this big combined celebration. I believe that Cypher is going to, we're going to determine for all of our named characters on board, are they going with the Beowulf or are they staying here with Emile? And the odds might be a little bit different for each one. I think Cypher is likely to want to stick around with Emile, but like Dash and Vert maybe less so. They may be, and Tycoon is definitely not. Tycoon is going to stay the captain of the Beowulf. But anyhow, they have this big party. They've had some libations and everything, and Emile has sworn this in particular to Cypher, but to the room at large, that he's going to do this. And he's not going to go with the Beowulf. This is priority number one, which is like definitely the sort of thing that he says mostly because he's drunk. Somewhere on the inside of his body, Fern is getting, nutrients, asterisk, by absorbing all this alcohol and stuff. Getting a little tip. Is finding out what it's like to be drunk. I think Fern has just been on the inside the whole time. And yet, in this moment, Emile kind of allows himself to not focus on the fact that, like, the wooden heart's out there. Like, we're definitely not going to be focusing on that. That clock may well really fill up. At least until he has a ship to leave eventually. But the main focus is going to be on the Reacher situation. But importantly, we got a strong hit on that. We are emboldened and it is clear what we must do next. And I think what Emile recognizes is, like, the ship is way too huge to just, like, we're not going to, like, make a crane and just lift it out. Like, the spaces in there are cramped and everything. What we need to do is we need to take on a kind of like a tunneling project in order to get the magma to flow away to somewhere else. Like, we need to drain the lake, basically. If we can tunnel it elsewhere, we can reveal the Reacher, and that'll make it all much, much easier. But in order to do, like, that's going to require a lot in the way of making the right kind of tunneling equipment, or there are probably some things that are, like, they used initially to make this base, but they aren't especially operational. Like, there are things that need fixing because they just wore them out in the process of this base. They need to come up with the plans on how to do that without burning themselves. They might need some kind of pumps and stuff to, like, there are lots of things to build to make this engineering project happen. But he's got a vision for it all, and so that's why he's emboldened and it's clear what he has to do next. However, there are a few things I need to do. One, connection move. I can definitely develop my relationship again because we swore this to Cypher. We are undertaking a perilous quest in their service, I suppose. Like, that's, I wouldn't phrase it exactly like that, but I think that's what this is implying. Like, it's to their benefit. So we're again going to get to fill in one box for Cypher. Boop. And we're going to find out the big question about who's staying and who's going. We're going to run through all of that, and then we're going to finally do the, like, we need to advance the clock on the wooden heart thing. I have not forgotten. We're going to do that. Because Emile is full on ignoring it right now. So, let's go down the list. We've already said Tycoon is definitely sticking with the ship. He's the captain of that ship. There's no way he's not taking a next tour of duty. Actually, yeah, just to make it more interesting, I'll give it the least possibility. Let's roll for all of them. I'm going to give myself the opportunity to maybe be surprised. So it's going to be a small chance, but we'll start with Tycoon. Like, maybe he wants to retire. Maybe he's done being a captain for a little bit. We do know he's traded around ships before, so small chance. Is Tycoon staying here rather than boarding the Beowulf? No, he's going to continue captaining the Beowulf, as we expected. Let's move down kind of the ranks on this. Let's get kind of on the other end of the spectrum. Let's do Cypher now, who is rather enamored with Emile. Again, mostly not romantically inherently, just impressed with him. Like, wants to be his buddy because she just thinks he's really cool and wants to see what he's going to do next. So I think it's more likely that she's going to take this opportunity to be like, you know what? She's still young in her service. Maybe somebody else could be more deserving. Like, she took on that role in hard times, but it's a new opportunity. other people that were here on Concord might be a better fit. Maybe somebody else will take over as XO. Well, she's more likely to stick around. So is she going to stay here with Emile and be part of this team that works on like getting Concord ready, with likely being the odds we get? Yes. Oh yeah. She was such a yes that would have been the case on small chance. Or no, not small chance, but on unlikely. She rolled a 15. So Cypher is definitely sticking around. She's going to be part of this revitalization crew as everybody splits off and kind of redivides themselves. I think there's probably a lot of people that were here during the prison escape that want to be part of Tycoon's crew because he's famous and everything, and they've been stuck on this planet. And it's a not wonderful place, so there's a lot of trading around of kind of nameless crew members. But let's go down to Dash. Dash, I think, could go either way, really. He's either a 50-50 or an unlikely as far as sticking around here. Because around here, it's mostly manual. I'm going to put unlikely. It's a lot of manual labor here. I think his capabilities could work better just working on the Beowulf and like recovering there, getting Ironsides going. Well, we never have had that chance to repair Ironside. I'm going to leave it at 50-50. Let's just see. He could go either way. Because it's not like he's... Like, his broken leg's getting better. He's not completely, like, incapable or anything. I kept imagining him just limping around with that broken leg, but it's getting better. It's been more weeks. He could definitely help out with a physical effort. And if he gets Ironside going, well, that could really help with these kinds of efforts. So, which one is he going to go for? Is he sticking around here? Is he going to space? I'm going to set this at just a 50-50. Is Dash going to stick around on planet to help out the reconstruction effort? No. His interests clearly lie, like, he liked being on board with the Beowulf. That was more his jam. I think it's mostly representative of how, at heart, he is more interested in finding the vaults. Like, he is a vault hunter through and through. He wants to find and discover them. He wants to know what's inside them. He wants to solve those mysteries. I think he recognizes that setting up a vault hunter home base, like, that is also important. Getting them established here, that's great. But it doesn't have the same kind of personal stakes for him. Like, that's not what he's focused on. I think he's gonna wish Emile well and everything, and lament that, Emile never was able to help him out with Ironside, but like they never just had that right opportunity. Maybe Emile spends a little bit of time giving him like a last pointer on like how he would pursue it. Like the real problem is with the like the focus on this first, and I believe you've got the capabilities. And like they have a last little kind of quick little clink to the idea of like next time they see each other, Ironside will be complete. And so let's go down the list to let's see about Vert. I don't think he is inherently joined at the hip to Dash. I think they were serving together, but they don't have to be moving forward. I'm going to leave him at 50-50 as well, because I could see it going either way. He could be very helpful here and might have that same sense of duty of like, I need to help people. Like, I need to help our community. We know that he has at least some amount of interest in becoming a doctor, and so he has that sort of drive towards wanting to help others, which is maybe a little bit more towards leaning towards this sort of effort compared to serving on the ship. But I really think it could go either way. So let's do this as 50-50. Is Vert going to stay here with the people of Concord? Yes, he is. Okay, so it's yet another thing to kind of drink to, as like Dash and Vert have been together for a while. They've seen some hard times, but for various reasons, Vert thinks it's time to like, they're going to split up. Vert is more needed here. He probably at least references a little bit that like, whether or not he still fully believes it, that he's like, still got to keep an eye on that Spencer. And like, I don't think he fully believes that anymore, but he at least mentions that like, just in case somebody's got to be able to stop him. But more at heart, he wants to help out. He's very strong. He's got that power armor. It could probably be very useful in this effort of lifting a huge ship or salvaging stuff from this sunken ship. He thinks that's more where he'd be immediately useful. So Vert's going to stick around. I guess I could roll for like the other named crew members like Splinter and Shutdown, but we haven't spent that much time interacting with them. Just a little bit, and I think I don't want to flood this area with characters. Like, we had a lot of them. Maybe we'll see them again, but I think it's just fair to say I'll just do small chance for both of them that they're leaving the ship. They're very likely to continue serving with Tycoon, so sure, is Shutdown going to stay here with us? No. That was a 98. There was like no way that was happening. And is Splinter going to stay here with us? Small chance. Oh, yes, actually. Rolled a 6. Cool. So, I mean, Splinter was kind of an interesting character. Splinter decides that maybe they've been on the front lines for a little too long. They could use some time to chill and not be the first person into danger. Maybe they could develop a new reputation here and not be like, hey, send Splinter down into the magma or the trap-filled zone. Like, it's been a rough tour. They've been really on edge. And it's time to just be like, you know what? I'm going to skip out this tour. So Splinter sticks around. And that just leaves one important thing to determine. And that is what happens as we continue to ignore the situation with the wooden heart. So as always, it doesn't inherently advance, but when we give ground to a threat through inaction, failure, or delay, roll on the table below. So this is a D100 roll as we see what happens as we shift our focus elsewhere and just kind of let that continue on its own. So D100, and we get 38. The threat works subtly to advance towards its goal, or the danger escalates. Mark Menace. So, really simple. We mark one more wedge on this clock. We're at 6 out of 10. And what does that represent? Is maybe we kind of zoom out a little bit from this view of everybody kind of making their plans and parting ways. You know, Beowulf takes off, the doors open up, and Beowulf leaves this station, and Emile is officially stranded here with no way off until they have a ship or something. The Beowulf leaves out the hangar doors, and we kind of follow it up into space, and then the camera zooms out even from the Beowulf and moves over across to this other sector, back over to Anubis, where we check in with what's going on with the wooden heart situation. It's a subtle advancement. But I think what we see is that through some of the secrets that the wooden heart has been able to share through just the knowledge that is carried in Zoya Silva, we see that now the people of Anubis, the worshippers, they have their own ships and everything. And the wooden heart has shared the secrets that allow a technology. It's a new kind of jump technology that works through portals, because they are trying, after all, to open up this portal that would be large enough to bring over this planet from another reality. And so this doesn't cross reality just yet. But the ships that these people of Anubis use now have been modified in such a way to they can move from place to place, just rather than having to do dangerous jumps and stuff and having exact coordinates. They can now open up basically a wormhole with a targeted, just here's where it comes out in other places, and just immediately and instantly go from place to place. They can travel incredibly quickly now and without a lot in the way of danger at all. They're very mobile, though it only works on particular ships that are just designed for this sort of like quick travel. And I think that what we see is that they are now being sent out, like these don't cross realities yet. That's the big thing that they don't have. They need to, there are a few things that they need to work on in order to get the planet over. One is they need to be able to have the resources to make a portal big enough for the planet. They need to find the things that are going to be able to make those beacons. Like we saw them developing them before, these sorts of towers in the plains of Anubis. The towers were there. They need to be brought into like space and like this triangulated thing in order to, like, they're the first part of making this sort of generating this portal. But they need to continue doing that, which is going to require resources. And they need to be able to develop a way to make it actually cross reality. Now, obviously, the wooden heart came here from a different reality to begin with. So like this information is known, but it has not yet been developed on this side. And so we see the scattering of these various sorts of scout ships that can now just travel via portal very quickly and without the same sorts of dangers of going through just the jump technology that most ships are outfitted with. They scatter out amongst the universe, looking for the right things with the guidance of the wooden heart to start just bringing them back. And so our last view is just that sort of thing, like just all these ships just going, like it's like they're all the way around the clock, just going in all the different directions, scattering out to start bringing things back. But Emile is actively not paying attention to that situation. It's just continuing unhindered. Emile has shifted his focus towards just being an active community member, working towards a large goal back here on Cinder, unable to even leave. As for how the salvage attempt is going to go, well, that's a question that we're at least going to begin next time. I'm going to make this outro quick because we're running kind of long on the episode anyway. I know at the beginning I said I was going to give you some prompts, but actually I want to shake it up a little bit this time. This week, for the creative portion of the show, for those of you who want to participate, I'm actually going to turn this whole thing on its head. One of you, just give me your own version of, the prompts. Give me a subject matter, and if you want, you can provide like the action and theme or descriptor and focus or whatever, or just tell me it should be an action and theme or a descriptor and focus, and then I want to look at one of those live and just see what I can come up with. This one's just kind of an open slate, just what is the topic, and how should I be determining the prompts for myself, and I'll try and do it live. Or well, I guess not live, but on the fly. None of this is live. Anyway, send your ideas into starforgepod@gmail.com, and until then, play me out, music.